Are we back? I believe we are. Welcome back to Son of a Preacher Man. As always, I'm your host, the Soapman. Now, if you're new to this channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. Now, as promised, in this episode, we're going to get back to Bible. But before we do, I got some cleaning up to do from my last episode, so just bear with me 1 second. Now, if you didn't see my last episode, it was called One Last Rant Part 2. And I took issue with Republican conservative Ben Shapiro about some positions he had. Now, I like Ben Shapiro. I feel that he's honest, fair, and just. He's an honorable guy. And there's not much I agree with Republican conservatives on, but I tend to agree with Ben Shapiro on a lot. But some of his positions I just can't get with. For instance, when asked at a debate about if the current government should institute policies to help low-income families so that they can right the wrongs of their past policies, was that okay? And Ben Shapiro replied, anytime the government tries to remedy past discrimination with current discrimination, all they're doing is effectuating discrimination. So what he was saying was, anytime the government tries to right their wrong, they end up hurting people in the process. Now, I don't agree with this. Affirmative action or policies like that, but we'll just say affirmative action, for example. What affirmative action is, was a rule that made people give black people jobs because they wouldn't give black people jobs at one time. So the government stepped in and said, you had to. It's a way of being fair, Mr. Shapiro. So for you to say anytime the government tries to remedy past discrimination with current discrimination, what's the current discrimination? They're righting a wrong. If somebody stole $20 from you, is it enough for them to say, I'm sorry? Or do you want your $20 back? Furthermore, you're of Jewish descent. I'm pretty sure your grandparents and parents didn't tell you to forget the Holocaust and let bygones be bygones and just start from scratch. You want your $20 back. So that was a BS flimsy insult to my intelligence of a position. Another issue that I took with Ben Shapiro was the 3 reasons he gave why he would be voting for Donald Trump in 2020. You see, in 2016, ahead of the election, Ben Shapiro gave a litany of reasons, all legitimate, why he would not be voting for Donald Trump. Some of those reasons was that Donald Trump was morally bereft and a big fat liar and totally corrupt. And I agree with him 100%. But in 2020, Ben Shapiro seems to have had a change of heart. And he listed 3 reasons why he would, in fact, be voting for Donald Trump in 2020. The first reason was he was wrong about Trump on policy. Now, this is what he meant. Ben Shapiro, meaning Ben Shapiro, is a Republican conservative. And he didn't think Donald Trump was a true Republican conservative. And therefore, he didn't think that Donald Trump would take pushing the policies that Ben likes seriously. But Donald Trump did. He did push those policies. He nominated a bunch of Republican conservative judges to the Supreme Court, along with a number of other things that Ben liked. So in essence, what Ben is saying is, I know this dude is foul and I know he's corrupt, but he does a good job. Now, to me, the same could be said about the devil. The devil is morally bereft, a big fat liar. He's the prince of lies, but he's good at his job. So my reply to Ben was, why not just sell your soul to the devil or vote for the devil? Because the devil and Donald Trump can be equated. There's not a lot of daylight between them. If you're going to vote for Donald Trump because you think he does a good job, why not vote for the devil? He's good at his job too. Look around. The second reason that Ben gave why he would be voting for Donald Trump is he said that although I was right about Donald Trump's character, he's done all the damage he could do, and my vote won't matter one way or the other. Now, this was hogwash to me. Nobody knows better than black people how important a vote is. We fought tooth and nail, blood and bone, high and low, for the right to vote. And we still do to this day. A lot of black people have died and still die so that people like me can vote. So for Ben to use that flimsy excuse like his vote doesn't matter, every vote matters, Ben, every single vote. And if your vote is so minuscule, why not just not vote? Because you know better. You were just looking for a flimsy excuse to justify voting for Donald Trump because he's a Republican and you're a Republican. But you still can't get over the fact that you know this man is completely evil. So just keep it real, Ben. Just say, I know Donald Trump is evil, but I'm going to vote for him anyway. I don't care. I can respect that more. I have more respect for a wolf than a wolf in sheep's clothing. The third reason why Ben gave that he would be voting for Donald Trump was, and I quote, Democrats have lost their fucking minds. And to this I replied, if Democrats have lost their minds, it's because Republicans lost their minds first. Crazy begets crazy. And sometimes you have to beat the devil sometimes you have to become the devil in order to beat the devil. So I wanted to finish up and make these last points about my last video, because in my last episode, I forgot to call Ben Shapiro a coon for these positions that he took that I didn't like. So now I'd like the opportunity to call Ben Shapiro a coon. Ben Shapiro, you are a coon. You are a coon. I'm sorry, excuse me. Ben Shapiro, you are a coon. Okay. Ben Shapiro is not quite a coon, but keep it up. If you're wondering why I have no problem going after these prominent figures such as Ben Shapiro or rabbis or I don't care what you are, Cardinal, Pope, Barack Obama, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Kanye, the reason I have no problem going after them when they're wrong is because the Bible says in Romans 2:11, there is no respect of persons with God. God doesn't care if you're Jay-Z or Beyonce. He doesn't care how much money you have. He doesn't care if you're a cardinal. He doesn't care if you're a pope, a bishop, a preacher. And so neither do I. You know, John Gotti handed out turkeys on Thanksgiving. That doesn't make him a good guy. God says he judges the inside, not the outside. So what that means is he puts more weight on what's in your heart than your activities. He's not so much interested in what you're doing as he is why you're doing it. So I don't care what your reputation is or was, how many people you beat up 10 years ago or 24 hours ago, how much clout you got, how much respect you got in the streets or in the pulpit. I just do not care. I feel like Martin Luther King did when he said to judge people by the content of their character. And so if your hands are dirty, or your mouth is dirty, or your behind is dirty, Soapman got to clean it up. Now, let's get back to Bible. Let's make sure our sound is good. Okay. Let's do it. Now, in my 12th episode, we discussed the biblical Moses. And I told you a story that you already knew. But in my 13th episode, I probably left a lot of you scratching your heads. And no, I'm not showing this slide because I feel that Moses was black. I'm not trying to have that argument. I actually believe that he was fair-skinned with reddish hair. But that's the subject of another video. You see, I don't really want to get into that argument and have a lot of people commenting, telling me, oh, well, the Hebrews were black, and white people saying that, oh, the Hebrews were white. They have the same argument with the Egyptians. Black people say the Egyptians were black. White people say the Egyptians were white. If you ask the Egyptians, they say both of y'all are wrong and sound stupid. Egyptians were Egyptians. But I don't want to get into that argument and have a bunch of people commenting in the comment section about that because I'm liable to take the bait. And we don't want me going on another 5-video rant now, do we? To be honest with you, the argument and debate between blacks and whites about who's black and who's white has really gotten out of hand. And the only reason either side is doing this is to put themselves on a pedestal so that they can stroke their own ego. Both sides or people on both sides who try to push these arguments, in my opinion, are ignorant, incompetent imbeciles. It's a silly argument. The Bible is not about color or race or about you promoting your color or your race. The Bible is about God. And so we need to keep it in that context. You know, I don't know if you got low self-esteem or just need a pick-me-up. And I'm not really gonna go off on a tangent about it right now. But I think it's really sad and pathetic that black people and white people are trying to adopt the accomplishments of other people to make themselves feel better. It's really silly, and y'all make yourself look really stupid. You need to do your homework and your research. Let's keep the Bible about what it's supposed to be about. Let's keep it in its proper context. The Bible is not about white people or black people. It's about God and his people. So, with that in mind, let's keep this in mind. It's not about what the Bible says. It's about what the Bible means. Now, here's another thing to keep in mind. The Bible often tells a story full of holes and gaps. And sometimes history can fill those holes and gaps. But let's focus on these holes and gaps for a minute. The holes and gaps in these biblical stories, they're there for a reason. They're not meant to leave you puzzled. They're not meant to have you lost. They're not meant to lead you astray. If there are holes and gaps in the Bible, it's because they're meant to be there. And if you run into those holes and gaps, it should make you want to study harder and research more and look a little deeper into what it is you're reading. Those holes and gaps are just as important as anything else in the Bible. What the Bible doesn't say is just as important as what it does say. Okay, now just keep that in mind. And I'm going to try to prove that to you and show that to you in the next 5 or 6 episodes, starting with this episode. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Now, I spoke with my mother about a week after posting my 13th episode. If you missed my 13th episode, it was my big reveal where I finally revealed the identity of the biblical Moses. And I said that the biblical Moses was in fact the Hyksos Pharaoh named Apepi. So about a week after I posted this video, and you probably didn't see it, it was my 13th episode. It was 2 hours long. I was way too excited, and not very many people watched a 2-hour long video. And I apologize to you for that, but I wanted to be the first one to publicly state that Apepi was indeed the biblical Moses. So I spoke to my mom about a week after posting that video. I was really excited to hear what she had to say. And what I have up on the screen here is what she said. She said, "I don't know, Soapman. The Bible didn't say that Moses was a Pharaoh." Now, naturally, I was a little bit disappointed by her response, but I couldn't get mad at her. She was being authentic. She had never heard that before, like many of you had never heard that before. But anyway, my mother's poignant response became the inspiration for this very episode, which I feel I have appropriately titled, "What the Bible Didn't Tell You." Now, in my 15th and 16th video, I did a recap of my first 13 videos, and the title was, "What I Wish I Would Have Said, But I Didn't Have Time." Go back and check those videos out if you haven't seen them. But they were titled, "What I Wish I Would Have Said, But I Didn't Have Time." Well, this episode is appropriately titled, not "What I Didn't Have Time to Tell You," but "What the Bible Didn't Tell You." And remember, I just said a few minutes ago, what the Bible doesn't say is every bit as much important as what it does say. Okay, one more time, let me check my sound because, dude, this is like my 3rd time recording this video. And I want to make sure that my music ain't gonna stop on me like it's been doing like the last 50 times. Okay, I think we okay. So, let's talk about Egypt. Moses was born in Egypt. And though he was not an Egyptian by blood, he was most certainly an Egyptian in almost every other way. Moses would have been exposed and privy to Egyptian culture, history, heritage, music, language, art, reading, and writing. And most importantly, religion and worship. Not to mention such customs as attire, food, women, the list goes on and on. He was everything Egypt except his heritage, where he came from, where his descendants, where his ancestors came from, was not Egypt. But in every other way, he was raised Egyptian. My point is, if you want to know about Moses, it helps to know a little bit about the environment from whence he came. Egypt is a land rich in culture and history, preserved over 1,000 lifetimes. There are very few civilizations as influential as the ancient Egyptian civilization, and their influence is still very potent even to this day. Who hasn't seen a movie like The Mummy, Part 1, 2, and 3? Who hasn't read a book or saw images of mummies? Images of pyramids? Who hasn't seen Egyptian art or Egyptian hieroglyphs? Who hasn't heard of the legends of how advanced the Egyptian technology was back in ancient Egypt? How much further ahead they were than civilizations of their time? Who hasn't heard about the foreign exploits of the Egyptian army? Who hasn't heard at least one name or story of the Egyptian gods? Treasure hunters to this day spend lifetimes digging through the Egyptian sands, chasing legends of tombs filled with gold and a myriad of other treasures. And who knows? If they're lucky, maybe there'll be a mummy in one of those tombs. And if they're really lucky, maybe the mummy of that tomb will be the remains of a great Pharaoh. So let's talk about Pharaoh for a minute. The name means great house. But we all know Pharaoh to be the big kahuna, the big cheese. Pharaoh is the man. He is both king and ruler of Egypt. But not only is Pharaoh king, to let him tell it, he is also a living god, or the embodiment of a god, or a god in human form, so to speak. But how does one get to be Pharaoh? Well, let Soapman break it down for you. Egypt is broken up into two halves, Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. Now, as you'll see on my slide, Lower Egypt is at the top in the north, and Upper Egypt is at the bottom in the south, and that seems backwards. But you have to look at it through the eyes of the Egyptians. It's all about which direction the river Nile flows. Just doing a sound check here, making sure we still on point, and I think we are. So you must look at the topography. See, I knew this was gonna happen. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Boy, I tell you, ignorance.
Bailey's deliciously
So I'm gonna just keep going because this is gonna be doing this all throughout my video, pissing me off, and I'm gonna get really irritated.
Where's mine? Oh, you want
Bear
one?
with me.
Celebrate with Bailey's Deliciously Light.
So look at Egypt through the eyes of the Egyptians. The way they look at it, it's all about where the river Nile flows. So you see my arrow here. This is the river Nile, and it flows from bottom to top. So the Egyptians look at the direction it flows, and that's how they map out the topography of Egypt. It starts down here at the bottom. So they call that Upper Egypt, even though it's in the south. This is the head. Actually it goes all the way down through Nubia. But as the river Nile flows upward, they consider down here the head of the river Nile. They consider the Nile Delta here, this triangle, they consider that the tail. So that's why the top is Lower Egypt, and down here in the south is Upper Egypt. The Nile, it all has to do with the direction that the Nile River flows, and the Nile River empties out into the Mediterranean Sea here. So, as I said before, Egypt is broken up into two halves, Lower Egypt and Upper Egypt. And it all has to do with the flow of the River Nile. Now, these two halves, as you see again here, see my arrow, Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt, and it has to do with the flow of the River Nile. And everything is centered around the River Nile. You won't see cities all the way over here to the west. You won't see very many cities over here to the east. They're all clustered and centered around the River Nile. The River Nile is the lifeblood of this country. Everything, their worship, their culture, their history, the people themselves, everything revolves around the River Nile. Now, as I said many times, Egypt is broken up into two halves. Lower Egypt in the north, Upper Egypt in the south. Now it is further broken up into districts along the River Nile. These little white circles are like cities, they're districts, they're areas. The Egyptians know them as nomes. And the governors or rulers of these nomes, are called nomarchs. Okay, so you have these areas, these districts called nomes, and the rulers of those areas or districts are called nomarchs. That's where Pharaoh comes into play. Each of these governors or rulers or nomarchs are a potential pharaoh. Each one of them has dreams and aspirations of being pharaoh. They're all little pharaohs hoping to become the big kahuna. But there can only be one pharaoh, or at least that's how it was supposed to go. That's how it's supposed to be. That's the Egyptian custom. Now, me personally, I don't live my life by how things are supposed to be. I live my life how things is. Just doing a sound check. I'm sorry. We good. Let's get back to Bible. So, that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be one pharaoh at a time. Now, in episode 12, it was titled Moses the Egyptian. I talked about the biblical narrative that everybody knows, but there was something new. I added a twist because Flavius Josephus tells a story that the Bible doesn't tell. It's what the Bible didn't tell you. He tells a story about a prophecy that both the Hebrews and the Egyptians knew of. And in that prophecy, the prophecy says that one child would be born to the Hebrews and he would raise the Hebrew people up out of their affliction, but at the same time, simultaneously bringing the Egyptian people down low. So he would free the Hebrews from their affliction at the hands of the Egyptians, and at the same time would bring the Egyptians very low. So, as the story goes, we all know the story of Moses. Pharaoh, the Pharaoh of Egypt at that time, had no sons. He had a daughter. And as his daughter was bathing in the River Nile, she noticed Moses, or she didn't know he was Moses, but she noticed a Hebrew baby floating in a reed basket up the Nile River. So she got the baby. She was so enamored and taken with him, she adopted him. So she brought him to her father and she said, "Oh, Daddy, look at this cute little baby. I found one of the little Hebrew babies. Can I keep him? I want to adopt him." So the father, being kind and endearing to his daughter and wanting to please her, he accepted and agreed that she could adopt this baby. And as a kind gesture to her, he took his crown off his head and placed it on the baby Moses' head. But Moses threw that crown down and got to stomping on it like Rick James on Eddie Murphy couch. Now here's the thing. This prophecy that I spoke of, I believe, is in a museum in England. Collecting dust in a museum in England, right up under the noses of scholars, is an ancient Egyptian text called the Admonitions of Ippawar. I believe Ippawar was the prophet that Flavius Josephus spoke of. And I believe this ancient text is his prophecy because it is eerily similar to the prophecy that Flavius Josephus spoke of. Now, it's not fully intact and we don't have it in its completion, but from what little we have, this ancient text is identical to the prophecy and the prophet that Flavius Josephus spoke of. Hold on, we don't want no problems, okay? We don't want no problems, okay? Okay, we don't want no problems. So this text, sitting right up under the nose of scholars in a British museum, I believe, is the prophecy that Flavius Josephus spoke of. It's the prophecy of this Hebrew baby that will be born. And in the admonitions of Apepi, it talks about numerous catastrophes that would befall upon the Egyptians. One of them is total darkness. One of them is the Nile River water turning into blood. It's identical to the 10 plagues that Moses brought upon the Egyptians. Now back to baby Moses. When Moses' daughter brought Moses to Pharaoh and he placed the crown on Moses' head, Moses threw down the crown, not violently. He was just a little 3-year-old kid. He was just, being playful and silly, but he threw the crown down and got to stomping on it like Rick James on Eddie Murphy couch, got to stomping and kicking on it. When Pharaoh's advisors and scribes saw this, they said, "This is the child of the prophecy," and one of them made a violent attempt to kill him, but Moses' foster mother, who was Pharaoh's daughter, saved him from the assailant. Close call. Now, I'm not trying to reshoot the 12th video or the 12th episode. I'm not trying to reshoot the 13th episode either. The point is this: the Bible makes no mention of any of this. We had to learn this from Josephus, God bless his soul. And hell, that's even if you believe Josephus, which I most certainly do. Okay, so let's get into it. The 13th episode was all about Apepi. He was a Hyksos pharaoh. In fact, every episode leading up to the 13th episode was about Apepi. Why? Because I believe that Apepi was the biblical Moses. I am 2,000% sure. Now, why do I say that? Well, it's really very simple. Whoever this Hyksos pharaoh named Apepi was, he happens to have the exact same life as the biblical Moses. And if you've never heard the name Apepi, it's because the Egyptians totally wiped his name from the history books. You have to do a lot of digging and researching to find out about Apepi. He was actually written about from the dynasty that Ramses ruled, about 300 years later. And that's really the only information we have on Apepi because the Egyptians don't want you to know about him. They don't want you to know about him today. They didn't want you to know about him back then because he so humiliated the Egyptians that they totally erased him from the history books. But he has the exact same life as the biblical Moses. And I happen to believe that that is not merely a coincidence. Quick sound check, y'all. We don't want no problems. We don't want no problems. Okay? We don't want no problems. Back on Apepi. See, I knew he was going to have problems. I knew he was going to have problems. I knew he was going to have problems. Stop playing.
If Damian Lillard
Okay.
let 6 all-star selections go to his head,
Back on
he
Apepi.
never would have had the heart
I don't
to get
believe
back to
it's
the
a
streets that
coincidence
shamed him.
that this dude Apepi has the exact same life as the biblical Moses. Because Moses' life is too unique to mimic. It's too unique to copy. You're not going to have a fabulous life like Moses and somebody even going to come near to having a life like that. His life was so grandiose, so unique, so prominent was this man and his deeds that anybody remotely similar to him should raise an eyebrow. Well, this dude ain't remotely similar. His life is exactly to the T like Moses is. He was truly the real deal. Now, experts and scholars, they try to claim that other people are Moses, but they just don't measure up. Let me give you an example. A lot of people say that Tutmosis was the biblical Moses. But Tutmosis, the only thing that he has in common with Moses is that he has Moses in his name. There was nothing, absolutely nothing in Tutmoses' life that can be compared to the biblical Moses. Nothing. He didn't perform miracles. He didn't free anybody. He didn't defeat a Pharaoh. Nothing. Another person that they try to say or equate with Moses is Pharaoh Akhenaten. Now, like Tutmoses, there is nothing in Akhenaten's life that can be compared to the biblical Moses. Also, like Tutmoses, the time period is way off. No way these people could be Moses. But people are in such a desperate search for the biblical Moses that they willing to make anybody Moses. They just like the blacks and whites at the beginning of this episode. They want to be Hebrews so bad that they find all these different flimsy reasons to justify why the Hebrews were black or why the Hebrews were white. They want to be Egyptian so bad, they find all these flimsy excuses to justify why the Egyptians were black and why the Egyptians were white. Not knowing the whole time they making a complete fool out of themselves because they are completely wrong. The Egyptians were not black nor white, and neither were the Hebrews. They just wrong all the way around. Let's get back to Bible. So, I took my findings to world-renowned Egyptologist Dr. David Rowe. I had been calling and texting and emailing all kind of Egyptologists and biblical scholars and archaeologists because I had just discovered something that nobody on the planet Earth knew but me. So I was anxious to get a hold of one of these guys and tell him what I had discovered. So I got a hold of Dr. David Rowe. Here's a picture of the old handsome devil here. Yeah, there you are, you old coot. So I hit Dr. David Rowe off with my theory and my discovery. And he said, I disagree with your whole premise. Here's a couple more things that Dr. David Rowe told me. He said, good luck making Moses into a Hyksos ruler. But I am not interested in that distortion of the biblical record. He also told me, you clearly do not understand the new chronology timeline. You need to do some serious reading. Well, we'll have to just see about that, won't we, Dr. David Rowe? Remember this, folks. It's not about what the Bible says. It's about what the Bible means. Now, as far as what Dr. David Rowe said about the chronology timeline, him and his own colleagues don't even agree on what the chronology timeline is. That's the most debated, disputed subject in all of Egyptology. And he couldn't deny that. Not even him and his colleagues can agree on what the chronology timeline is. It's all over the place. As far as distorting the biblical record, Dr. David Rowe doesn't know the biblical record. He's an agnostic, which means his position is he doesn't know if God is real or not. He has no say-so in it. And I highly doubt he is as thorough in what the Bible says as I am. But I didn't hold it against Dr. David Rowe. He has the right to his opinion. And out of all the people that I emailed and texted, he was the only one who gave me the time of day and even called me back. Now, I made a list. And let me just say this. All these contenders of who Moses is do not add up. They don't cut the mustard. They don't match up with the biblical Moses. But Apepi does. But here's the problem that most people have with Apepi being Moses. First, the name. Apepi. Second, the Bible doesn't say Moses was a Pharaoh. Both my mom and Dr. David Rowe had a problem with that. My mom said, I don't know, Troy, the Bible didn't say Moses was a Pharaoh. Dr. David Rowe also said, I'm not interested in distorting the biblical record. Their problem is the Bible didn't say Moses was a Pharaoh. The first problem was the name, Apepi. It's not Moses. It's not Moses. Why? People scratching their head like, "Duh, what the hell are you talking about? Apepi? Who is that? Why are you saying a dude with a totally different name is Moses? The Bible didn't call him Moses. And the Bible said his name was Moses, not Apepi. The Bible didn't say his name was Apepi. And the Bible also didn't say that Moses was a Pharaoh. Well, what's the name of this episode, folks? What the Bible didn't tell you. The third problem that people have with Apepi being Moses is me. Now, I'm going to explain all of them. But I'm going to take the rest of this episode just to deal with the first problem. Problem number one, the name. The name is Apepi, also pronounced Apepi. But this Hyksos Pharaoh was also known as Apophis or Apophis. Now, this is the English translation of it. If you was back in ancient Egyptian, nobody would have been like, hey, Apepi, hey, Apepi. They wouldn't have said it like that. You would have heard them say, Abubi, Apopi. That's how they would have said it. That's how his name would have sounded back then. They would have said either Abubi, or they would have said Apopi. That's how they would have said it. Apepi or Apepi is the English translation. It's the English way of saying it. It's like I call my cousin Jamel. Yo, Jamel, what's up? But if like one of my white friends called Jamel, they'd be like, hey, Jamal. You know what I'm saying? But I just want you to know that little fun fact. I'm not making fun of white folks. I'm just keeping it real. So, the name Apepi or Apepi or Apophis is what he went by. Okay? Are y'all following me? What's the problem with his name? Well, it's not Moses. Well, who is this? Who? I'll tell you who this is. This is Lassane Crooks. Yeah, that's his name. Lassane. Last name Crooks. You probably know him as Tupac. Well, Tupac wasn't his birth name. Tupac was his stage name. It was the name that he chose to go as. He changed his name to Tupac Amaru Shakur after the legendary Indian who fought against the Europeans. But that wasn't his birth name. His birth name that his mama gave him was Lassane Crooks. Now, why is this important? Moses was born to a Hebrew mother. For all we know, she may have given him a Hebrew name. We don't know. We know his name as Moses. That was a name that his foster mother gave him. Moses was the name that Pharaoh's daughter gave him. And the reason she gave that name was because she rescued him out of the river Nile. You see, in Egyptian, Mo is the word for water. And Usis means to be saved from that water. So that's why Moses' mother called him Moses, or it would have been pronounced Moshe. For all we know, his Hebrew mother named him something different. But he went by the name that his Egyptian mother gave him. Like Tupac. Here's another one of my favorite rap artists, Twista. But that's not his real name. His real name is Carl. Twista is his stage name. It is the name that he chose to go by. It's not his birth name. Well, the same thing happens when you become an Egyptian pharaoh. When you become an Egyptian pharaoh, you take on the name that you choose to be known as. And usually the name that the pharaoh chooses is associated with his favorite god. And there are about 200 different Egyptian gods. If you think I'm lying, if you think I'm mistaken, look up the different pharaohs of ancient Egypt. You will see that those names are called throne names, and their derivatives are very similar to the names of Egyptian gods. It's not their birth name, at least most of the time it's not. Need I say this dude's birth name is not Sting? It's like Arnold or something. It's not Arnold, but it's, you know what I'm saying? It's like his birth name is not Sting. Sting is a stage name. It is the name he chose to be known as. Well, that's what Apepi is too. Apepi was not this pharaoh's birth name. It was the name he chose to be known as. KAMOSE is an authentic and legitimate pharaoh of Egypt. He was an Egyptian born and bred. Now KAMOSE, this is actually his name. He did not take on the name of one of his favorite gods. He kept his name. He was one of the few. 3/4 of the time a pharaoh is going to take after the name of his god or his favorite god. 25% of the time, they kept their own name. Just like some rappers. I think maybe Kendrick Lamar is his real name. I don't think Kendrick Lamar is a stage name. I think Kendrick Lamar is actually the dude's real name. So just like some rappers, they don't take on a stage name. They keep their real name as their stage name. Well, the Egyptians were kind of like that also. They were kind of like rappers. Sometimes they took on a stage name. Sometimes they used their regular name as their stage name. Apepi would be a stage name. That's not his birth name. KAMOSE is this guy's real name. So KAMOSE is an authentic, legitimate pharaoh of Egypt. His heritage stems back through Egypt. His ancestors were Egyptian. He was an Egyptian born and bred, blood and bone, blood and soil. He was the last pharaoh of the 17th dynasty. You can look him up. Google it if you think I'm wrong or mistaken. KAMOSE, last pharaoh of the 17th dynasty in ancient Egypt. And I also believe that he was the pharaoh of the Exodus. KAMOSE ruled in Thebes, and I've presented a map here for you. Thebes is in Upper Egypt in the south. Okay? All of the land north of Thebes was ruled by Apepi, someone with foreign ancestors not native to the land of Egypt. Hell, Apepi even ruled south of Thebes. So a foreigner named Apepi was ruling most of Egypt as pharaoh. And at the same time, an Egyptian pharaoh named KAMOSE was ruling at ancient Thebes, which today is called Luxor. Now let me get my little pointer out, because I want you to see all of what Apepi ruled. Apepi ruled up here from the Nile Delta, and he ruled all of Egypt all the way down to right above Thebes. But then in addition, he ruled all the way down south of Thebes also, as far as Aswan. Now south of Aswan, the mighty Nubian Empire dominated and were steady making their way north, gobbling up Egyptian lands in the process. The Nubians are allies of Apepi. Let's do a little bit of history. Not long before this scene that I just set, the Nubians marched up and they had conquered all of Egypt. Flavius Josephus tells a story about how the Egyptians wanted to kill Moses when he was a young man. So they told him to go to war, take the little pitiful Egyptian army and go to war with the Nubians. But Moses won that fight, and he kicked the Nubians out and pushed them all the way back down south. Now, by the time Moses is a grown man and is ruling Egypt, the Nubians have started making their way back up the Nile River, and they've made it about as far as to Aswan. So the Nubians rule the south up to Aswan. Apepi rules the south as far up to Thebes, and then he rules all of the north above Thebes. So Apepi is in control of most of Egypt. KAMOSE rules one area around the city. KAMOSE rules Thebes and the small areas around Thebes. And the rest of Egypt is ruled by the Nubians far down in the south. I hope I didn't confuse you. If I did, I'll clean it up some. This is a good picture to show you, but it's not that good. So if you see my pointer, the Hyksos, and Apepi is the ruler of the Hyksos, they rule Lower Egypt up in the north. The Nubians rule southern Egypt. KAMOSE, true Egyptian Pharaoh, rules the middle. And actually, he didn't rule even this much, but this is still a good picture to give you an idea of how KAMOSE, Egyptian Pharaoh, was being squeezed by this Pharaoh from the north named Apepi and by the Nubians invading from the south. He was really in a tight bind. Now, KAMOSE hates Apepi. KAMOSE hates Apepi. Let me emphasize this. I cannot emphasize this enough. KAMOSE hates Apepi. He practically says so. And KAMOSE has good reason to hate Apepi. Apepi is Pharaoh, but he's not a true Egyptian. He is in fact a foreigner. He is a foreigner ruling the land that the native KAMOSE really should be ruling himself. And if that isn't reason enough to hate Apepi, well, how's this for a kicker? Apepi killed KAMOSE's father. And I talked about this in the 13th episode. I'm not going to go deep into this, but if that ain't adding insult to injury, the guy who killed your father is ruling the land you should rightfully be ruling. And on top of that, he is a foreigner. He is of foreign descent. His ancestors were not Egyptian. So KAMOSE hates this man, Apepi. He absolutely loathes him. He hates his guts. He says it, and we'll get into that in my next episode. Folks, the stage is set. A fight is brewing between these two pharaohs. It's just a matter of time. The old man versus the young man. Apepi versus KAMOSE. But we don't really know if Apepi is an old man, do we? We don't know who he is. There's very little information on him. All we know is that he's a foreigner. He's very powerful. And Apepi is not his real name. Okay, folks, I gotta end it there. I don't know where I am on time, but my music production keep messing up. And I have to stick to my guns. We cannot go over an hour on this, okay? So, with that being said, we're gonna finish this up in a part 2, what the Bible didn't tell you. We're going to finish talking about Apepi. I'm going to break it down as much as I possibly can. I hope I didn't confuse you too much in this episode. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for joining me on this episode of Son of a Preacher Man. Once again, if you're new to the channel, hit the like and subscribe button. Please, oh please, let me know in the comment section how I'm doing. Tell me I'm a jerk. Tell me I'm a stupid idiot. Give me some feedback. Tell me great job, horrible job. Ask questions, make comments, make accusations, man, it's all good. Comment in the comment section. Let me know something, give me some feedback. So, with that being said, I will see you next time on Son of a Preacher Man. Same soap time, same soap channel, baby. I'm out. Oh yeah, sorry about the music. I try to get that straight for the next episode, but it ain't that bad, right? La cucaracha. You know what I'm saying? Got a little Hispanic little jingle in the background. Not bad, right? I tried, man. You know, I ain't a DJ. I tried. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Next time, Soapman.